Shakti Seer 2.
Okay, so beginning. I wanted to read a little bit from River of Fire, River Water again. It's a really good book. It integrates and combines Buddhism and Bhakti together. And the stage where I'm at right now, that's something which is very prevalent in my spiritual life. So when I went to open the book today, the first chapter, I opened it immediately to this page. If you can't see, it's chapter 18, Arrogance. So I think it's really important to hit on negative tendencies like that, because a lot of the time when you focus just on the positive, reinforcing yourself, telling yourself that you're God, telling yourself how great you are, like a lot of these teachers want to do, like Abraham Hicks, for example, or someone of that nature, who just keeps on wanting you to tell yourself that you're perfect, wanting you to tell yourself that you're God, wants you to tell yourself that there's nothing wrong, you're bliss and everything. And it creates a lot of delusion. It creates plenty of delusion when you just focus on the positive, quote-unquote. That's why it's bad to just, quote-unquote, focus on the positive. And I've always spoken out against it for years now, because I see that's a trick that Satan is playing on people right now. Making people think that we're all these great things, and that we're so positive, and that we're so awesome, and that we're the best, and that our teaching is the best, and that our path is the best, and that you know, I was just reading in one of my Sufi books this morning, and it said like that the ego always thinks of itself as being better than everybody else. So this kind of positive reinforcement, saying, oh, I'm God, I'm perfect, you know, that is coming from a lot of New Age sources. If you try to tell them like you're negative or anything like this, they'll shoo you away. Oh, you don't have the proper realization, you're not wise like me, and see that there is no fault in yourself, all this kind of stuff. And from one angle, he's right, because what is a fault anyway? It's only relative, and you're only at the stage where you're at. But from another angle, it's completely the wrong way to go, because if you kind of assert dualistically from this preconceived notion that you're faultless, then you get exactly that, a dualistic assertion that you're faultless and nothing more than that. So you don't want that. You don't want just a dualistic proposing that you're faultless, but you want what's true. You want to follow truth, because truth will lead you to the reality, and not dualistic asserting that you are this or that. So if it's truth that leads us to the reality, and not just a dualistic assertion from the ego, then it comes that it's positive to focus on the negative, quote-unquote. It's more than that. It's just the reality. And you will never hear any enlightened teacher tell you to be positive, tell you that enlightenment is about being positive or anything of that nature. They'll tell you not to run away from your faults, but to keep them front and center. Keep them constantly front and center. Not pushed away to the back, hiding behind a wall of my own preconceived duality about what I am. But we do like to do that, don't we? We like to hide our faults away. Rather, the ego likes that. I'm not, free of that. You're not free of that. There's seldom many people in the world who are free of that. But we need to be free of that if we want to attain. And it's not just enough to assert that they're empty in a dualistic way. But emptiness is what's realized. That's why Prajnaparamita Sutra is called what it is, or Prajnaparamita Hridayam, the Heart Sutra. Prajnaparamita means wisdom gained by experience. You can't just say, okay, I'm empty in this, or my negative emotions don't exist, or things like that. You have to realize the emptiness of them through experience. You have to realize the emptiness of them by direct wisdom. And that direct wisdom is not arrived at by forcing from the mind. All this kind of egoic forcing is precisely that, just the ego asserting itself. So, in one sense, you should ground yourself in detachment. And in another sense, you should be absolutely fully conscious of all of your faults. Keep them front and center in your mind. And that way you can work on them. And that way you can improve them. And that way you can try to overcome them. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to read the chapter called Arrogance. While humility is the natural and spontaneous expression of an awakened person, our innate tendency as foolish beings is the very opposite. Arrogance that appears in various subtle forms. Buddhists have paid a great attention to this fact, for it is the perennial problem and upsets the equilibrium of life. Or it is a perennial problem. Meaning it comes back again and again and again and again and again. Buddhist literature speaks of 7 types of arrogance. Common arrogance, mana. Great arrogance, adhimana. Multiple arrogance, manatimana. Arrogance of believing in enduring selfhood, ashmimana. Vain arrogance, abhimana. Humble arrogance, unamana. And deceitful arrogance, mityamana. The first, common arrogance, is to feel superior to someone who is clearly inferior in ability, intelligence, appearance, status, and so on. This happens, for example, when we see the homeless wandering in our cities. We feel clearly superior to them. Yet if we should feel pity but do nothing, it is another disguised form of arrogance. But this common arrogance also occurs when we think that we are better than someone else of equal status or achievement. Great arrogance is to think that one is better than an equal, but also includes the notion that one is just as good as someone clearly superior. We find this frequently when we identify ourselves with our best and brightest in a group, with the best and brightest in a group to which we belong. It can be family, class, race, creed, or nation, sometimes a sports team, social club, college fraternity, business firm, and so on. We act as if we are better than others, not because of our individual worth, but because of our identification with a recognized group. Multiple arrogance, or literally arrogance piled on arrogance, is to feel superior to someone who has everything: money, status, looks, talent, popularity, and influence. It is done by claiming some special knowledge or unique possession however trivial it may be that the superior person may lack. We find this in academic one-upsmanship among scholars who pride themselves in knowledge of trifling minutiae. And I would add, we also find this in the New Age so much. You know, I myself have been more than arrogant on several occasions, on many occasions. And I see it happening constantly with people commenting on YouTube videos and just YouTube videos in general, not to mention YouTube videos on the New Age stuff, or just people who I talk to. I run into so many people who, and I thank God that I don't even like deal with like, you know, like groups of star seeds or awakened indigos or other stuff, because there's so much arrogance in those circles. I can't even be around it because I'll like react and it'll make me dragged into it, and I just ignore it completely. But it's there so profoundly and so deeply entrenched, this spiritual arrogance and spiritual ego, that it goes completely unnoticed. And it's so sad that we are supposed to be this awakening movement of people, but what I see is some people who are waking up and other people who are being delegated to like a type of fringe, almost a fringe of channelers and indigo, this and that. And while a lot of people are choosing to disassociate themselves now with the term New Age, or actually a lot of people I've noticed, which is a good trend, but if it just goes to create another subgroup of arrogant asserters, then it does no good either. We all are subject to these three types of arrogance, and very few of us are immune to them. I have a friend, for example, who suffered several heart attacks requiring a bypass operation each time. The condition of his heart is so poor that doctors have refused further operations. But he dislikes talking about it because once he mentions it in public, there is always someone who tries to show him up. Oh, you've had a heart attack? I've had 2. Oh, yours was a triple bypass? I had a quadruple bypass. Oh, that's right, you almost died? Well, I was dead. I mean, I know, that's another reason why you should never talk to people about your personal spiritual experiences, and I only do so with people who I'm sure are not going to react like that, and people who, you know, want to actually talk with you about it and just aren't in some like egoistic reactionary mode. And even among people who I just talk about plain things, that ask me about the pineal gland or things like that, if I think that all they're trying to do is just like one-upsmanship, or if they come at me with this type of multiple arrogance where they feel that, you know, they're superior or whatever, they want to try to say, yeah, I've done that, yeah. I just block a person and ignore that, because it's complete vanity. That arrogance isn't even listening. It's just the ego asserting itself. And so it goes on and on. This reminds me of the story of Christian desert fathers who are trying to outdo themselves in self-mortification, dying unto oneself. A monk brags unto another, saying, "I'm deader than you are." The remaining 4 types are other forms of arrogance that are not usually recognized as such. Arrogance of enduring selfhood refers to the unquestioned belief in the existence of a substantial I. Buddhism teaches the error of grasping the 5 aggregates, skandhas, as constituting an enduring selfhood: form, body, sensation, perception, psychic disposition, and consciousness. Although Western philosophers as diverse as Hume, Kant, Nietzsche, and William James have shown the non-existence of a substantial self, it plays an unquestioned role in our daily life. Yeah, I mean, even something so subtle as the enduring arrogance of, or the arrogance of believing in an enduring self. The arrogance of wanting to claim this or that as me and hold it up and rub it in people's face and say no 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 is the logical conclusion of this type of arrogance. So you see how deep that arrogance and these kind of negative traits are entrenched within ourselves. Then you can see how dire is the situation on this planet right now. Try to teach someone like this. Try to root it out of yourself. It's freaking impossible nearly. Which is why that more and more time should be spent focusing and devoted on hearing and chanting deeply the qualities of Bhagwan and transmuting this mire of darkness out of ourselves. Or they would say in Shin Buddhism, chanting the Nyanfo, hearing and chanting of the Nyanfo, the Nembutsu. As long as we assume such a fictive self is real and enduring, we are the epitome of arrogance. The negation of the conventional self does not mean that we should recognize our daily life and make plans for the future. Rather, it urges us to be fully aware of the fleeting nature of existence, and do not place our whole being on such an undependable self. Buddhists live with such an understanding as exemplified by Genza, who once said, "As long as a man lives, he must work and plan for 1,000 years. Even this Genza plants persimmons and chestnut trees. I have a lot of work to do in this world, but we must listen to the teaching as if there is no tomorrow." Because this life is so brief, so short. And you do not want to be at the end of your life and just start to take an interest in your soul. It will be really hard to counteract those many, many years spent not caring about the soul. Vain arrogance is to make false claims about attainment, especially of some kind of spirituality. In the first place, true attainment is not possible within conventional thinking based on the subject-object dichotomy, which inevitably objectifies everything and prohibits self-knowledge. Moreover, if one has realized true attainment, there is no need to talk about it, since all dichotomies have been transcended. Who is there to talk about it with? There are variations to the following story, but once there was a young samurai who begged to study with a master of the perfect art of swordsmanship. In the interview, he asked how long it would take to perfect the art by practicing hard 2 hours every day. The master replied, 4 years. Then he asked about practicing 4 hours a day, and the reply was 8 years. But when he asked how long it would take to become a master himself, practicing 8 hours a day, the answer was never. True mastery of any art is endless, involving both bodily and mental training. Hence the motto of the No Actors is, always keep the beginner's mind. Humble arrogance is encountered when people feign humility to attract attention and gain some kind of recognition. There are people who seek sympathy and pity from others to bolster self-image. Both Christianity and Buddhism teach the virtue of meekness and humility on the religious path, But when this is claimed apart from the truly religious life, it is just another way of seeking special attention. Deceitful arrogance is to inflate oneself up by bragging, speaking half-truths, and engaging in double talk. This is, of course, ego assertion and self-aggrandizement in their most blatant forms. The religious person is fully aware of this potential of in one's own being, so the critical eye is turned inward, although our common tendency is to point fingers at others. We all desire to overcome these forms of arrogance, but the more we try, the more we realize its immense difficulty. The least we can do is to be realistic, admitting our inability to be completely free of them. But this admission is also very, very painful. In fact, this inability is another evidence of a limited karmic being. Genza, 1842-1930, was well known for counseling people of the Shin faith. Once a man said to him, "I'm a hypocrite. When I go to the temple, I sit in front of Amida and enjoy saying the Nembutsu, but when I go home, I forget everything completely. I'm a hypocrite." Thereupon Genza replied, "But if you admit that you're a hypocrite, that's good, because it's really hard to be a real hypocrite." Om Tat Sat. That we're so positive, and that we're so awesome, and that we're the best, and that our teaching is the best, and that our path is the best, and that you know, I was just reading in one of my Sufi books this morning, and it said like that the ego always thinks of itself as being better than everybody else. So this kind of positive reinforcement saying, "Oh, I'm God, I'm perfect," you know, that is coming from a lot of New Age sources. If you try to tell them like you're negative or anything like this, they'll shoo you away. "Oh, you don't have the proper realization. You're not wise like me," and see that there is no fault in yourself.
Shakti Seer 2.
Okay, so beginning. I wanted to read a little bit from River of Fire, River of Water again. It's a really good book. It integrates and combines Buddhism and Bhakti together. And the stage where I'm at right now, that's something which is very prevalent in my spiritual life. So when I went to open the book today, the first chapter, I opened it immediately to this page. If you can't see, it's chapter 18, Arrogance. So, and it creates a lot of delusion. It creates plenty of delusion when you just focus on the positive, quote-unquote. That's why it's bad to just, quote-unquote, focus on the positive. And I've always spoken out against it for years now, because I see that's a trick that Satan is playing on people right now. Making people think that we're all these great things and all this kind of stuff. And from one angle, he's right, because what is a fault anyway? It's only relative, and you're only at the stage where you're at. But from another angle, it's completely the wrong way to go. Because if you kind of assert dualistically from this preconceived notion that you're faultless, then you get exactly that, a dualistic assertion that you're faultless and nothing more than that. So you don't want that. You don't want just a dualistic proposing that you're faultless, but I think it's really important to hit on negative negative tendencies like that, because a lot of the time when you focus just on the positive, reinforcing yourself, telling yourself that you're God, telling yourself how great you are, like a lot of these teachers want to do, like Abraham Hicks, for example, or someone of that nature, who just keeps on wanting you to tell yourself that you're perfect, wanting you to tell yourself that you're God, want you to tell yourself that there's nothing wrong, you're bliss and everything.